how to actually build them. But this is a new generation and a new opportunity. And you are here to listen to a gentleman who's with a company that is going to turn this around. That is the way it looks right now. So even though we're in Bickerson's, in a brewery, we are talking about really historic events. And I want to emphasize this. I've been an energy guy for a long time. And I watched nuclear power rise and fall and rise and fall. It was rising rapidly before Fukushima, but as the saying goes, an accident somewhere, anywhere, is an accident everywhere when it comes to nuclear power. Not natural gas, not hydropower, not a dam collapsing, but with nuclear power. There is this very special and very unfortunate mindset. The gentleman who is sitting to my left will tell you about a very special type of reactor, the next generation of reactors that has no possibility of blowing up at any level, and is even able to shut itself down. It is not a unique, it is actually a proven technology that has been overlooked.
Thank you for that. My name is Mark Werner. I'm here talking about TerraPower, the Natrium Reactor technology. Really glad to be out in Ballard at a great brewery, talking on a great late summer evening. I'm probably need help with the slide deck. Someone can just advance slides. At TerraPower, we have great stakeholders, great founding fathers of our company. Really got a bunch of smart people together a while ago to really help change the future of our world. They were very focused on how to improve, poverty levels in the world, and very early on in their studies, they realized that raising energy poverty is a way to increase the health of our world. And so TerraPower was formed as a company looking into how to deploy cheap, clean, reliable energy across the world. And very early in TerraPower's history, we discovered that nuclear energy was really the way to do that. So from the outset of TerraPower, we've been focused on developing nuclear technologies that can really improve the overall clean energy future of our world. So if you get the next slide, please. TerraPower started about, almost 20 years ago. Bill Gates and a bunch of similar like-minded visionaries kind of got together, as I said, and really tried to develop an idea for clean energy. Early on, they developed ideas about a traveling wave reactor that could be underground and fully autonomous, that could run on really low amounts of uranium, generating high amounts of energy. We took those concepts and really started to put them into practical terms, applying engineering principles to it, and that eventually became our traveling wave reactor. We established a local presence here in Bellevue, started building out laboratories about 10 years ago, and our company really grew into an engineering firm with the focus of deploying advanced reactor in the near term. The traveling wave reactor eventually became what is now called Natrium. But along the way, TerraPower developed alternate types of nuclear energy. We've got a molten salt chloride reactor that we're developing along with the Natrium reactor. Along the way, TerraPower actually started developing alternate nuclear technologies, and we've got a medical isotopes company called TerraPower Isotopes, where we are able to produce an actinium product that's a targeted alpha therapy product that actually just recently got put into human trials in Australia. So we're actually not only developing advanced reactor technology, we're also using nuclear technology to help cure cancer. So TerraPower itself is just a phenomenal company developing many innovative products. Hit the next slide. About 2016, 2018, we were developing the traveling wave reactor technology, and just due to geopolitical events, we decided to refocus our technology on the U.S. Market. And about that time, the Department of Energy thought it was a really good idea to kind of jumpstart the nuclear industry. As we talked about, it was kind of laying dormant for a while, and nothing like a good government funding opportunity to give a good jumpstart. So the ARDP program was deployed, and it was really an opportunity for companies to partner with the government and share a 50-50 cost share in developing and demonstrating reactor technology. So in 2020, the DOE actually awarded TerraPower one of the two main awards, and this was a big award. It was a $2 billion grant to TerraPower to build and demonstrate the Natrium technology. And so from 2020 on to right about now, TerraPower has been very focused on developing and deploying the Natrium technology. So next slide, please. Shortly after 2020, we decided that the place we want to demonstrate the technology was in Kemmerer, Wyoming, which is in the southwestern part of the state of Wyoming, a couple hours away from Salt Lake City. A great place to deploy an energy project. They've got great conditions to generate electricity. They've got a welcoming community, and we've had nothing but smooth sailing trying to stand up a project in that area.
How many people here have been to southeastern, southwestern, Wyoming? A few. So it's wide open, high chaparral country, very beautiful, especially if you're an antelope or a Mustang. Yeah, there are Mustangs out there in the Tri-Corner region. It's a great place for, as Mark would say, any energy facility. And so it's a great place to start a new history, I would say.
Yeah. Thanks. And we have located our advanced reactor technology just down the road from a retiring coal power plant. And one of the reasons why we looked into Wyoming was the fact that they are a power-rich state, but they also are deciding to retire quite a few coal power plants there. So there's a great opportunity to transition these communities from coal to nuclear, which just makes a great story. So we can go on to the next slide. So that kind of gives a little bit of a story arc of TerraPower and why, where we're at today and where we started. I did want to kind of talk now about the Natrium Reactor technology. So if we could, this is a picture of a fuel pin bundle. But if we go on to the next slide, the Natrium Reactor technology, I don't know if this is showing up super well on the screen, but it's a really interesting reactor technology. We start with a sodium fast pool style reactor. And we couple that to a molten salt thermal storage system, and then that is coupled to a traditional power block. So on the left is our reactor. It is a fast reactor, so the neutron spectrum is a fast spectrum, and that's different than most of the existing power plants today is a thermal spectrum. So we are operating a different spectrum, allows us to use more fuel more efficiently. It's a sodium reactor, so our main coolant is a liquid sodium. Most of the reactors operating today use water as a coolant, which also moderates the reaction. Everyone knows what water is, but sodium is definitely a new material for many people, and we'll see a picture of what sodium looks like a little bit later. It's a pool-style reactor. What that means is the entire primary circuit, or the primary heat transfer is within a large vessel. And that vessel is at atmospheric pressure. The pool-style reactors are generally considered more safe than loop-style reactors. You can't have loss of coolant accidents. You have large thermal inertia as a coolant, so in case of any abnormal events, the thermal inertia just allows the reactor to coast on down to a safe state. So the pool-style reactors is a really safe technology, and that's why we've chosen it.
So most of you know that, or perhaps, I'm sorry, don't mean to presume too much, but in the existing reactor fleet in the world today, those are light water reactors. And the water operates both as a coolant of the reactor core, moving the heat out of it and into the generation of steam, but also as a moderator, which slows down the neutrons so they can be absorbed much more easily by the fuel that we use, uranium enriched in the U-235 isotope, which fissions quite nicely. A lot of the other isotopes don't. Now, water has been a double source of help. It's a coolant and it works as a moderator, but it has also been the Achilles heel of the existing reactor fleet because of the loss of coolant accidents that happen, the core that then melts down. This is what happened in actually 2 of the 3 main accidents. And then boils away and leaves the core exposed. So having sodium at atmospheric pressure, you do not have the difficulties, the safety concerns that go along with water reactors, whether it's heavy water, mostly light water. So this is a new generation kind of reactor, much safer if that's a concern, and for some people it is. So this is important. This is part of the historic dimension.
Great, thanks. And so what we've done is we've taken this pool-style sodium fast reactor and coupled it to a thermal salt energy storage system. And what that energy storage system looks like is 2 large tanks of molten salt, one hot and one cold. And we're able to store the energy in terms of heat in the hot salt tank. And when we want to turn that heat energy into electricity energy, we can draw the hot salt from that hot salt tank, which is over here, and take it through a steam turbine and generator and generate electricity. This thermal storage system, which we put between our reactor and our electricity generation, is borrowed from the concentrated solar plant industry. They've developed and deployed this technology domestically here in the U.S. and around the world. So this technology really provides a lot of flexibility for our reactor technology because it allows us to store about 5.5 hours of energy throughout the day. This allows us to dynamically load follow with our electricity generation. It allows us to couple with renewable energy sources, which are intermittent throughout the day. So this thermal storage system hooked up to our reactor technology allows our reactor to be a dynamic, zero-emitting load peaker that doesn't exist right now and is super advantageous when we think about the future energy markets, the energy markets.
And this has been a criticism of nuclear power for a while, that if it wants to raise the amount of electricity or lower the amount of electricity that it's producing, it takes a long time. So it can't meet sudden changes in demand. But this is among the Generation 4 technologies that are going to be able to do that. This is very, very important because it means that nuclear can take the place of, let's say, natural gas and to a certain extent coal and also oil, which is used around the world significantly to generate power. So this is really a true advance. Now, when they say molten salt, it's not like the white salt on your table. It's actually a liquid that you can conceive of as having a lot of salt dissolved in it. The salt is able to retain the heat. It has what we would call high heat capacity. So it stays hot for a long time, much longer than, let's say, if you just left the water there by itself. And so this is a real advantage. This is a system that is able to run 24 hours a day, constantly regenerating the heat that is then stored in the molten salt and can be used for other purposes. But sorry, I'm running ahead.
Yeah, it's all good. If we go to the next slide, this is just a schematic of our reactor plant. So we saw what the reactor looked like on the last slide. These buildings here are where our reactor would be housed. These are our molten storage tanks. So we've got 4 here, large molten salt storage tanks. This is where our energy storage is. And then these are the turbine facilities that take steam that we generate from the molten salt. and turn electricity. And here's a switchyard. So this would be what a dual Natrium reactor unit would look like. This could generate up to about a gigawatt of electricity, but it would also be able to turn down to about 200 megawatts of electricity. It'd be able to load follow that much on a daily basis. So we'd have about 5.5 hours of energy storage here, 2 storage tanks. And this area over here is where our reactor is. And so this is our reactor area, or our nuclear island. This would be our energy island. And this area over here is where our energy storage and power generation is.
And this is what you're building right now?
We are building 1 unit in Wyoming.
So half of this, basically.
Half of this, yes. Yep.
So half a gigawatt.
Yeah, yeah,
As
500
peak.
megawatts.
So what would a gigawatt power?
A lot of stuff.
Yeah, lots of stuff. Like what?
About 1 million homes.
So San Francisco runs on 2 gigawatts. So you could pretty much power most of Seattle, a gigawatt of power. So the full size plant that they're building would be able to power a city. No coal plant can do that any longer. And if it did, it would have many turbines and burn an awful lot of coal.
All right, we just go ahead and give you 2 slides.
One more?
Yep, one more. And maybe one more. There's a little bit of the video here I wanted to get to. Yeah, the buttons will start playing, I think. This is
Oops. Click the button to start playing. Sorry. Sorry. Oh.
This is just a fly-through, 3D fly-through of our plant. This is what we're building in Kemmerer, Wyoming. It's laid out on the landscape, so this is what Kemmerer looks like. Wyoming, some nice open hills, rolling valley here. In the middle here is our single reactor unit in this area here. This is our reactor building. We've got a reactor auxiliary building and a fuel handling building. This is what our plant looks like. This is what we're building in Kemmerer, Wyoming. We started construction on site. We'll see some construction video pictures in a little bit, but we started moving ground here early this year. These are our energy storage tanks, like I said earlier, and our steam generating turbine facilities over here in the back. If you ever do come visit the site, you'll probably drive up on this road. This is Highway 189, and this highway goes up and goes to the town of Kemmerer, Wyoming. One of the very interesting things about this reactor is, since it's so safe, the emergency planning zone for it falls within the site boundary. And why that's important is because the emergency planning zone is like the boundary in case if anything happens. That's the area around the reactor that you have to control. And for most light water reactors today, the emergency planning zone is like 10 miles or 25 miles large. Ours is within the site boundary, so it just kind of shows how safe it is. This is the turbine building right here. This is our cooling tower. We're using mechanical draft cooling. This is our switchyard, so this is where electricity leaves the turbine facility, goes to the switchyard, and then this takes it and puts it on the grid for use. So this is what we're currently building, Kemmerer, Wyoming, a 500 megawatt plant, 5.5 hours of energy storage, and using our advanced Natrium reactor technology. So if we could go to the next slide. This is next slide is an image of what sodium looks like. So sodium is a liquid metal. On the right is at room temperature. It is a solid form at room temperature. It actually cuts like butter. Looks like butter. Feels like butter. It's not liquid butter. Feels like butter when you cut it. You can see it's a little pink here where you cut it. Does oxidize with air, and so that pinkness is just oxidation. So this is solid at room temperature. And then when you heat it up, it turns into a liquid metal. And so this is hot sodium, about 300 degrees Celsius. This is in an inerted glove box. You do have to keep sodium inerted when it's hot, or it will react with the humidity in the air. So this is our main coolant. This is what flows through our reactor, through our core, picks up heat. And this sodium is a great heat transfer fluid since the metal has high conductivity. On the next slide is a picture of our salts. So we have a sodium fast reactor that couples to a salt thermal storage system. So this on the right is liquid salt, it's clear. On the left is solid form, and it is kind of a white substance. This is molten solar salt, and it's a pretty commonly used product around the world. So this is something you can buy pretty easily, but we'll need lots of it at the plant because that's how we deploy energy storage. If we go to the next slide, this is actually a picture of a reactor. So this is what the inside of a sodium fast reactor looks like. Down here is our reactor core. This is where the fission happens. This is where our enriched uranium is. It is a pool style reactor, so we have a hot pool and a cold pool. This is all liquid sodium, and this is a large reactor vessel that is filled with liquid sodium. Cold sodium is down at the bottom, and that gets pumped through our core. In our core is where the nuclear fission happens, and that fission puts energy into our coolant, heating it up to a hot temperature, and that hot sodium then goes up into our hot pool where it just circulates, and then that sodium in the hot pool then gets drawn down through our heat exchangers, transferring our heat to an intermediate loop that goes off and goes in our energy storage system. So if you hit one more button, this shows kind of that heat transfer loop I just talked about.
Oops.
But this is what our reactor is. It's a pool style reactor. So that all this equipment is inside the reactor. There's no penetrations in the reactor. Everything stays inside. There's a large volume of sodium. So sodium is a great heat conducting material. So if anything happens in this reactor, it can conduct the heat out from away from the core out to the outside of the reactor. It's all at atmospheric pressure, so all these structures are not pressurized, so they're under low stress, which makes them very safe and robust.
So what happens if you lose power to the station and the pumps stop?
Yeah, so one of the common events that reactors have to analyze is loss of offset power. So what ends up happening is under normal conditions, these pumps are spinning, pushing coolant through the reactor core, removing heat from the fission reaction. If we lose power, these pumps would coast down because they have large rotational inertia. So we get about a minute of coast down. So we continue to push sodium through our core for about a minute. Upon loss of power, we drop all our control rods. So we have head-supported control rods that have control bundles above the core. These control bundles are B4C or boron carbide. That boron carbide, when you put it in the reactor, will snuff out the reaction, will absorb neutrons. So we drop our control rods, we stop the reaction, and then we keep pushing sodium through the core, removing decay heat. Because sodium is still moving through the core without pumps on, because we coast down, we naturally generate natural circulation through the reactor, and we're able to kind of dissipate the residual heat through natural circulation and heat removal through the outside of the reactor vessel.
So the liquid sodium continues to circulate by its own,
Yep.
under its own.
Natural circulation, so the hot areas and the cold areas have thermal imbalance, and it drives a natural draft circulation through the core, removing heat.
I see. So there's no meltdown.
No, we're able to fully remove decay heat without any active elements. So this reactor effectively does not need any electricity or any additional safety systems to kind of remove heat. It's all natural draft circulation, which makes it really safe and robust.
So if there's a problem, good.
Compared to pressure water reactors, what is the difference in temperature?
Repeat the question.
Yeah, there was a question on the difference in temperatures, and so our temperatures are hotter. I know what our temperatures are. I'm a little bit fuzzy on LWR temperatures. We operate at between 300 and 500 degrees Celsius. I think LWRs are quite a bit lower than that. We operate at that range because we can. We don't need the sodium is, a good high temperature coolant material. All of our steels are rated for that temperature, so we can get higher efficiencies in our power generation systems with higher temperatures, so we can run higher temperatures.
Yeah, the LWRs usually are in the 300s. So if you get up to 500, you're quite a bit higher. The higher temperature you can go, the more steam you can generate and produce more electricity. They're more efficient, higher temperatures.
All right.
I'm curious, if the CRDMs fail, would the convective cooling still be sufficient?
Oh, yeah. I mean, what you'd be worried about if your CRDMs don't go in is just that your reaction continues to go.
Right.
And so, one nice thing about a fast reactor is that we do have a negative reactivity coefficient, a net negative reactivity coefficient. So if we do have some kind of event where all of our control rods don't go in, the reactor itself will actually return to a very stable state. So what ends up happening is as the core heats up, as it would without any flow or any control, the fuel expands, all the fuel assemblies expand, and they separate, and this allows additional leakage of neutrons out of the core, and it inserts negative reactivity into the reaction, and that lowers the reactivity. And once you start lowering the reactivity, the reactor will stabilize and remain at a lower power. And so the reactor itself has an inherent negative reactivity, which allows it to stabilize in the event that a control rod doesn't go in. I will say that we have about 13 control rods. All we need are 2 of them to go in to fully shut down the reactor. So quite a bunch of redundancy in control rods, and those are fairly over-engineered mechanisms. So we have a lot of confidence that they'll go in.
So this has actually been proven. It was proven in 1986, about 2 weeks before Chernobyl happened, that we had a special reactor called the Experimental Breeder Reactor number 2, EBR number 2, and it was put through this test where the power was removed and the reactor essentially shut itself down. This never became well known because Chernobyl took the news coverage away from everything else, but this was a major advance. And now Natrium and TerraPower are picking up on this for the first time. The story of nuclear power is very interesting in the United States and in other countries. In terms of the actual designs, it was said by some of the original thinkers that you could build many, many different types of designs, maybe as many as 100 or even 1,000. But this is one that was tested and proven to work. And it's only now that it's being picked up on and improved. These are real improvements. It's an interesting kind of situation.
Thanks. EBR2 is, we're definitely leveraging a lot of the technology developed as part of that experimental breeder reactor. Yeah. All right, let's, if there are any other questions, we'll keep moving. Let's hit one more slide. One thing I wanted to talk about was this thermal energy storage system coupled to a nuclear reactor and how it really allows us to dynamically load follow. Some people who study energy know about the duck curve, they call it. It's a daily energy profile throughout the day. Basically, in the morning when we all wake up, we turn on all our appliances or lights and we use a lot of electricity, and then we go off to work and the sun comes out and the wind comes out, we generate a lot of renewable energy, and so our energy needs through the day are provided by renewable energy, and then we go home and it gets dark out, the wind dies down, and we go home and turn on the lights and the TV and we use a lot more energy. So throughout the day, the general energy demand goes up and down a couple times. It's called a duck curve if you study it. Traditional nuclear reactors just generate base load power, so they turn on and they produce power throughout the day whether we need it or not. But by deploying thermal energy storage, we're able to deploy or dispatch electricity when the grid needs it, all while keeping the reactor on constantly. So what this graph shows is in the middle, we've got our molten energy storage tanks that go up and down throughout the day as energies need to be dispatched. On the left here, we have our reactor power. The reactor stays constant, so we're always operating a reactor, and we're always putting hot salt into our hot salt tank. But when we turn up our turbine, which is over here, we deplete our salt tank, but we put a lot of energy on the grid during the days when there's peak energy demand. When there's not a lot of energy demand, which is usually in the middle of the day, we can turn down our turbine and we put more hot salt in the hot salt tank. So this is our thermal storage system. It's a battery. We charge it up when the price of energy is down, and we discharge it when the price of energy is up. And we're able to do this multiple times a day. We're the only reactor technology that can do this. We've integrated this energy storage system into our reactor to be able to kind of go after this dispatchable power market, which we really think will only grow as more and more renewable energies are dispatched in the grid.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Oh,
You have all this heat you're generating. Can you use it for other things besides electricity, especially when demand is low?
Yeah, I think our vision is that this is an integrated energy system. So once we get heat into these energy storage tanks, the molten salt tanks, we can definitely use it for other things. There's quite a bit of industrial heat usage around the world. Lots of chemical processes use heat to perform their processes. And so we do believe once we can deploy this technology that we can couple these energy storage tanks up to a chemical process, maybe a petrochemical process, and generate other products other than electricity, which would further help reduce, carbon emissions around the world. So we see that as a future. I think we are focusing on electricity generation at first, because that's kind of the most apparent need.
That would help the economics of the thing too.
Yeah, it might. Okay. One more slide, please. One thing that we've studied, and I'm sorry these slides don't show up super well, is that, so we talked about load following and how our system can provide variable power throughout the day. One other interesting thing is that the cost of transmission is really high. So when we need to deploy more energy throughout the world, or throughout the country, we generally look at the most cost-effective way to do that. If you think about renewable energy as a cost-effective way to deploy energy, the good locations for renewable energy aren't always where people are or where energy demand is. And so what people that do grid modeling have studied is, on the left is an image of a low-cost system that has, all the green dots are renewable energy spots. And what you see are these big green lines are the additional transmission lines that you needed to build in order to get renewable energy to where the population centers are. Now that's true if you want to solve all your energy needs with renewable energy, but if you can deploy a flexible energy solution, which Natrium is, you can deploy a combination of renewable energy and Natrium reactors throughout the country. This is supposed to be a map of the western part of the U.S. And you can really reduce the amount of transmission lines, because as renewable energy use goes down, we can replace that energy with Natrium reactors. So we actually saw an 83% reduction in new transmission capacity by solving a grid-wide system problem with Natrium reactors versus without. And we really see this as a great selling point for a reactor product. When we talk with utilities around the world, around the country, they're really interested in Natrium because the dynamic load following capabilities really solve their grid level problems. And so this is another great selling point. So just talked about our reactor technology quite a bit. We can go to the next slide. So it's a really great idea. We really like it, advanced technology, but how do you bring a reactor to market? There aren't a lot of people or companies around the world who just want to buy a first-of-a-kind reactor. So the U.S. government has really stepped up and helped us create an opportunity to really develop and demonstrate the technology. So like I said, in about 2020, the U.S. deployed this advanced reactor demonstration program that we won. It was a $2 billion grant from the U.S. government. And we formed a big team to help us deploy this technology. So these are all of our team members working on the Natrium demonstration project. TerraPower is the lead. We're bringing the technology and a lot of the private capital. Bechtel is our EPC, our engineering procurement construction partner. Hitachi is a technology development partner. They also are making our fuel. We've got several national labs on here that are helping us out, just about every national lab. A couple of fuel suppliers, and a couple of utilities. And Pacific Core is the utility that will eventually take our electricity once we get up and running. But Energy Northwest, which is a utility here in Washington State, has been a great partner along with Duke Energy. The project itself entails us designing, licensing, and constructing this advanced reactor in Kemmerer, Wyoming. We are going to follow the 10 CFR Part 50 licensing process, which is a two-part process. It's initially you submit a construction permit application to the NRC. Once that's approved, you can construct your plant, and then you submit an operating license to the NRC. Once that's approved, you can operate the plant. So we've already submitted our construction permit application. It's currently under review by the NRC right now. Hopefully that will get approved in about 2 years' time, and we'll then start nuclear grade construction on the site. This project also includes us building a HALEU enrichment facility, or starting a HALEU enrichment facility, and building a fuel fabrication facility. It includes the first initial core load that we need to start up the reactor. It will help strengthen our nuclear supply chain around the country, around the world. And it will actually help us develop an operations organization to be able to operate this first reactor. So this program or project that the government is helping us fund will really get us to fully demonstrate this technology by the end of this decade. So this is a great opportunity for us. You want to go to the other question?
Yeah, a question. Does everyone know what HALEU is? Okay, one person.
There's got to be more than one person in the room.
I know there's
Okay.
Oh, okay. But there's still people who don't. So could you explain what that is?
Sure. So, HALEU is high assay, low enriched uranium. The level of enrichment that we have to enrich uranium is less than 20%. Most of the operating fleet, which uses low enriched uranium, uses about 5% plus or minus 5% enrichment. We need more enrichment to create our fast reactor environment. And so we need a little bit less than 20%. That's about as high of enrichment you can get without it being like military grade enrichment. So you can't really go higher than that by rules from the government. It does require more enrichment than the current fleet, so we do need to develop the enrichment facility to get to HALEU. But once we get that, we'll then be able to turn it into our nature. So,
It's a fuel that gives you more bang for your buck.
Yeah.
Also.
Where will the HALEU facility be sited?
well, we're still working on who will provide our HALEU facilities, so that is one challenge that we have, and we at TerraPower would really like the government to take a role in helping develop HALEU capacity in the U.S. We do think there is a big market for it in the future. We're not the only users of HALEU. Other advanced reactors would use HALEU if it existed. We'd love if the U.S. government helped a U.S. supplier develop HALEU.
We need it in the Northwest, right?
We need it, yes. But there's other options, and we're looking at all options. Our fuel fabrication facility, where we take that HALEU and turn it into fuel pins, which we saw earlier, will be in Wilmington, North Carolina, at the global fuel campus there, the next NPH. So we have started designing that facility, and that will be built in operational time to start our reactor up in 23.
Is it just through traditional like centrifuges? Or?
That's one way to get there, yeah. Yeah, just additional steps. Yeah.
So two-part question. One, do you have spent fuel assemblies? And two, if you do, are you building an ISPAC on site?
We do have spent fuel assemblies, so much like the current fleet, we'll put new fuel assemblies in, they'll be rated for a period of time, and then we'll discharge them. They'll be stored in dry casks like traditional LWR fuel, and we will have an ISPAC pad on site for temporary storage. Yeah.
So I'm not sure if this is the right question. The burn up of HALEU and And the Natrium reactor, though, is much higher, so volume-wise, is that true? That it's,
Yeah, for our advanced fuel form, we will basically per volume produce about half the amount of fuel, spent fuel as a LWR reactor. So when you normalize for massive uranium, it's about half as much spent fuel, or twice as efficient burning uranium.
and refueling the reactor is estimated to be how often?
We have a 2-year irradiation cycle, so every 2 years we'll come down for a couple of weeks and refuel and then get back up. So we don't do online refueling. Some advanced reactor technologies have online refueling. We do bring the reactor down to refueling state, so we stop generating power, refuel, and come back up. So we do. So through the kind of the better economics, the more efficient fuel use and a 2-year cycle, we actually have very good fuel economics compared to an LWR, even with the HALEU. Yep.
My impression is the Chinese are building 2 sodium reactors. Are you any wisdom sharing going on with them?
None. Yeah, nuclear technology is a controlled technology, and so there are many export controlled rules on what we can talk with foreign nationals about, and we are not allowed to talk to China about it. So we're happy to be working in the U.S. We do have international relationships with countries that we'll share technology with for China.
Chinese are doing just fine without anything more from us.
Well, I was thinking actually we could learn from them.
Oh, ouch.
Well, they've built a lot more reactors in the last 20
They
years.
sure have.
Yeah.
Boy, they have, yeah. And we build a lot more.
But they've taken our technology, haven't they?
Okay, so China is on a tear. They have been since the 2000s. These are part of their 5-year plans. Part of their original idea was in 2008 was to permit 6 to 7 new reactors every year. And that has been pretty much the case. So they started in 2010 with 11 reactors. They now have 56. So they have built the fleet that France has, essentially. And they have done it in a shorter period of time. And some of these reactors are very large, the largest that have ever been built, using a French design called EPR, European Pressurized Water Reactor, which generates has a capacity of 1.6 gigawatts. That is a mother of a reactor. And the Chinese will build 4, they built 2 already that are successful. Finland is actually just finishing building another one. But the Chinese have taken designs from a number of different countries and designers. Perhaps the largest number of reactors have depended upon designs from Westinghouse altogether. But the Chinese have made the reactors bigger and have advanced them in other ways. They have built a number of floating reactors, and they have built some Generation 4 reactors, a pebble bed, in which fuel are little spherical units that you have thousands of in the reactor, what we would call a reactor core. And they use helium as the coolant. And they run at very high temperatures, so they get very good efficiencies out of them. And the Chinese have just run one successfully in tests, and then recently hooked, it's a fairly small model, but it's working, up to their grid. Their long-term goals are to choose 2 to 3 designs to export throughout the world. The global expansion of nuclear power is larger than we have seen in a very, very long time. Larger than, if I can make this guess, of the lifetimes of a lot of people here, not mine. The Chinese have a major plan to use nuclear power both to reduce emissions, their dependence on coal, but also to create another massive export industry. The Chinese have done this again and again and again, and they are doing it now in terms of climate appropriate, put it that way, or carbon emission reduction technologies. They did it with solar and wind when they saw that these would be very large industries, and they started doing this before 2010. And their ability to create these massive industries and export them are one of the reasons that solar prices have come way down. It's not just due to improvements in the manufacturing everywhere. It really has a lot to do with the economics of the Chinese state and industry partnership, to put it that way. After that, they improved on hydropower dams and turbines that are used in various, in pretty much all heat generated power generation. And now they're doing it with electric cars, aren't they? I mean, what do we have? 100% tariff to keep BYD out? That's a plague, isn't it? You know, a plague of electric cars. These are some of the ironies that we're in the midst of. That is not a homegrown industry. It is coming in to challenge and perhaps even defeat our own car makers and Europe's. And so we're throwing up these high tariffs to keep out a technology that has everything going for it in terms of climate change and emissions. So I would propose to you, and this is an opinion. Okay, this is an opinion. I haven't been an idiot for a long time, but I'm certainly not one now. Wouldn't you think that if climate change were a very large priority for a government like ours, the richest country in the world, that another program to improve homegrown non-carbon energy generating technologies would draw a lot of money? If we're going to put up a huge fence, a barbed wire fence to keep Chinese electric cars out, yes, we want to protect our own electric cars, but here is a technology that is homegrown. And I'm sorry, $2 billion is peanuts. It is peanuts compared to what the Chinese are investing. This is my opinion. I don't represent it as fact, but I think there is a little bit of a paradox going on here. Wind and solar have been drawing a great deal of subsidies since the American Recovery Rehabilitation Act under the Obama administration. Nuclear, no. And now this is being hailed as a new technology that can really change the game. But it's still a cost-sharing program. If the government were really serious, they would bankroll this in a very serious way, the way they did in the 1950s and the early 60s, when GE and Westinghouse were the two big operators and builders, and had money from the military and from other cabinet departments. This is something that, you know, I should probably get down off the soapbox about.
I was going to say you should write your local politician about it.
I am.
We would definitely take more funding if available.
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't have to spend the money.
Please, go
Some
ahead.
questions, yeah.
Who is your nearest competitor in the U.S. For energy?
Who's our nearest competitor? Well, from there's probably a couple answers there. In the nuclear industry, we have a couple competitors, and within the nuclear industry, I think this was mentioned, we're all kind of rooting for each other because one failure usually leads to another. So we want everyone to be successful There was 2 reactor technologies selected in the ARDP program. The other one is X Energy. They're a different reactor technology. They are also partnering with Energy Northwest and looking at demonstrating with Dow, right next to a Dow site in Texas, I believe. And so they're another competitor. They're on a similar trajectory as us, and we hope they're successful. General Electric Hitachi has a smaller boiling water reactor that they're marketing, and they have a project going on in Ontario. And so they're deploying a small modular reactor, and we hope they're successful. AB1000s were built in Georgia, and they're the last 2 reactors that were built, like you mentioned earlier. I kind of feel like they're still a competitor. We can still build those if we want to. And in Georgia, they'll make lots of clean electricity for that state. So those are that's the nuclear industry. NuScale is another reactor technology not too far away down in Oregon. They have a certified design by the NRC that they deploy. So those are the main names in the nuclear industry that have a shot of deploying technology in the next 10 years. I think our true competitor is natural gas, though, because what ends up happening is a utility needs more electricity. They know they need it 3 to 5 years out, and they need to build an asset, and they can either build nuclear, which we are demonstrating this. It's going to take us to 2030 to demonstrate it. So that's how long these projects take. They know they can build a gas plant in 3 years, and it costs $1 billion. So more than likely, our true competitors are either renewable energy or gas power plants, and that's until we can demonstrate that we can build this. That's what we're up against really for the market.
And we have the cheapest natural gas in the world, and has everything to do with the fracking revolution. So a lot of lands that were previously uncommercial. This is an area I know a fair bit about since I worked for the dark Satan, the oil industry, for 25 years, including looking for gas near Cameron, in the Green River Basin. And so we are in geopolitically a very good position with natural gas. We produce it, we export it. We saved Europe from a very, very bad energy crisis when Russia invaded Ukraine, and Europe decided to stand fast and cut Russia off in terms of its supply, because it was supplying between 40 and 50% of the imports for Europe, and they had a very bad year in 2022 anyway, but we kind of saved their bacon. So that's part of the paradox. We have lots of natural gas, and from a geoscientific point of view, the world has more fossil fuels than we could ever know what to do with because of the fracking technology and what it is able to make recoverable at a profit. And this comes just exactly at the wrong time in history. And I mean the history of humanity. But we'll have to see who is in power in the United States and how far this revolution will continue, the fracking revolution, because it's really not even a decade old yet. And it has turned the geopolitics of energy on its head, completely on its head. Anyway, sorry, that's the lecture on my energy course in the winter. That's the first 10 minutes. I apologize.
So
But you got it for free.
one more question, and then we'll keep moving. Yeah.
Okay. I'm wondering, do you have any cost targets you can share once you're commercial? Obviously not for this plant.
Yeah, I probably won't share numbers. I mean, we are very competitive on most of our project quantities with other technologies. So I think once we demonstrate, get over our first of a kind hurdles, we'll be very competitive in the current given current technologies. When we study our quantities and our labor rates and our costs, it comes out to be very comparable with existing technologies. So this U.S. demonstration project underway, gets us to fuel load. Where are we today? So if we go to the next slide, we'll see where we are today. This is our site in Kemmerer, Wyoming. This was taken in June. It's a gorgeous blue sky day with with a light breeze, so the flags are full. We broke ground on site in June. This is our site. Right in front is our ceremony of groundbreaking. And so we had a big ceremony, we kicked it off. We've been working on the site since June, and we're really excited about just moving dirt and being an active construction project. We go to the next slide.
That one looks actually like you're burying your competition.
Yeah. This is a great picture. This is my team. These are all my managers that work for me. We got to all shovel dirt together, so this is one I'll frame on my wall some point. This just shows the teamwork that we put into getting this far, and the teamwork we'll need to kind of move forward. Next slide. This just shows some things that are going on in the state of Wyoming. Why did we end up in Wyoming? Well, we do have a partnership with Pacificor. Wyoming is a big coal state, but they know that they need to transition away from coal, so they had a number of coal sites that they were retiring. We visited 4 different sites, and there was 4 different towns interested in us demonstrating our technology at their sites. So we got welcomed in Wyoming with light arms, warm hugs. We looked at 4 different sites, and Kemmer, Wyoming was we thought the best site to demonstrate at. So we did select Kemmer, Wyoming in November 2021. We have a constant presence in Kemmer, Wyoming. This picture, the upper right, is us just drilling some boreholes. We have to study the ground before we can build a nuclear power plant, so we did extensive site evaluations. This picture in the lower left is a group of us meeting with the governor of Wyoming. So we have a great relationship with both the state and local officials in Wyoming, and they're very supportive of the project. Community support is an important part of any of these projects. We form a strong bond with the community because it ends up being about a 60-year relationship once you get one of these plants up and running. So we have great local support, great state support. And this bottom right picture is our chairman, Bill Gates, talking in Kemmer, Wyoming at an event we had last year, which had a great turnout. So we've got a big presence in Wyoming, and we've started construction there. Now we can maybe move on to the next slide. We are transitioning in Kemmer, Wyoming from coal to nuclear. We think this is a great selling point of nuclear Natrium technology. We do plan on using the assets from the coal site for our site. The workforce, we are able to retrain the coal power plant workers to become nuclear power plant workers. A lot of the support utilities that go into the coal power plant, water, transmission lines, we're able to reuse for our power plant too. So we're really trying to understand how to transition from these assets that are retiring and deploy new generations. So we think that's a great story. Next slide, please. This is just more about what the different types of infrastructure we're benefiting from. This is our site in winter. It's a cold place. I think if we hit a couple more slides here, I think this is kind of towards the end of my slide deck. One more slide. This is kind of just the benefits of advanced reactor. We're smaller, we're safer, we can provide base load or flexible power, as we talked about. And then the last slide kind of hits on some points that we made earlier. We do really see this investment by the U.S. government as an investment in our energy security. So we've met with many government officials, and I think on the left here is the Secretary of the DOE walking through our facility up in Everett, and our leadership team talking with the Secretary. We do have strong government support. We've made it, this program that we're under was created under the previous Trump administration, fully supported under the Biden administration, and we look forward to future support and whoever gets elected later this year. It is a private-public partnership, so our stakeholders are investing about 50% of the money. We'd love to get more, but we do think this is what's needed to kind of advance this technology. So with that, I think my slides are done. Next slide. The twin challenges of energy security and climate is kind of what's pushing us forward, and we just really look forward to working through this project and deploying our technology. So that's the end of my slides. Now we can have our questions.
So put that on your bucket list. historic place to visit. Questions, any? Yeah, question.
You mentioned that your type reactor is like working after neutron region as opposed to the thermal neutron region, and you achieve higher efficiencies with like more greatly enriched uranium. Why is that?
Your question is why are we more fuel efficient with higher enrichments?
Yeah, and also how does the work in the active or the fast spectrum work as opposed to thermal?
Yeah, so you're asking good like nuclear engineering questions. So how does the fast spectrum work versus the thermal spectrum? So the thermal spectrum, I think you talked about it earlier, the water is a moderator and it slows the neutrons down. And that allows us to absorb heat into the coolant and slows the reaction down. In a fast spectrum, the neutrons are not slow down, so they stay fast and they can hit the other neutrons, and that's how the fission happens. In fast neutrons, we can actually breed up fissile material more, and so we're basically able to breed and burn the material in a fast neutron spectrum more so than a thermal neutron spectrum. So that's why we use fast neutrons. And we need the enriched uranium to initiate the fast neutron spectrum. I will say I'm not a nuclear engineer though. I'm a mechanical engineer by trade. I do have a nuclear engineer in the back, Tommy Cisneros, that could maybe answer that question better offline.
You actually get more fission with the fast. You get, say, 7% fission with plutonium. Normally, when you're converting some U-238 into plutonium-239 during fission, during the LWR reactor, you're only getting about 63% or even less of the fission of plutonium. So it's actually fast. A fast spectrum reactor is more efficient even in generating fission reactions. Yeah. So you get more heat and
Yeah, question.
I'm assuming I know the answer, but is there plenty of coal-fired plants to go and kind of switch over into nuclear? Because I was at a fusion company earlier today, and they said the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So is it like a high competition, whoever gets there first? Or?
It's definitely an opportunity for who can figure it out to do it efficiently. So, in Wyoming, they've got 4 plants that they know they're gonna, shutter within the next couple of years. In the Mountain West, there's a lot. In the East, in the West Virginia area, they're transitioning away. A lot of the climate change type policies that states are enabling are kind of driving out coal and looking for clean energy replacements. And so these assets kind of are still available to use. They just can't burn coal, and so they're looking at how to transition them. So I know in Wyoming there's opportunities, West Virginia there's opportunities, and whoever can figure out how to economically transition those sites will have a customer for sure. Even in Europe, I know they're really interested in it. There's a lot of coal in Eastern Europe that they're getting rid of. So.
Thank you.
we have about 300 coal plants that are being decommissioned around the country. Some of them are quite large. Texas, for example, has a fair number, but so through the Midwest, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, the Rust Belt states. And they're presently being decommissioned, which means they're kind of being broken down. And there is not an awful lot of discussion about transforming a lot of those into nuclear plants. There's more discussion about turning them into natural gas plants right now. So this would be very, very important as a demonstration project.
Thank you.
Quick question in the back. Okay.
When it comes to like nuclear technology development, what does the government-private partnership look like in other countries?
Oh,
I can answer. I know around the world, governments have different roles in technology development. We heard a lot about China. China is fully funding their nuclear development through their
Not fully, but most.
yeah, a lot of state-controlled projects. If we look at Russia, they have a lot of state-controlled projects. Countries like the UK and France, I think, are also in a similar state as us, where their government funds certain aspects of their projects. The UK last year just formed a new part of their government called the Great British Nuclear Program. They're trying to jumpstart their nuclear industry as well. And so Japan as well has a similar program as the ARDP, where they're trying to advance, their nuclear technology, although they're still kind of working on starting up their existing fleet that got shut down. So I think other countries like us are having similar programs where they're creating government opportunities to jumpstart nuclear. So we're seeing it around the world, similar types of initiatives.
Just one small addendum. Actually, the U.S. has left a lot of the nuclear industry to private ownership. And in most of the rest of the world, governments control a great deal. This is particularly true in France, where it's been quite successful. So the French government is a major shareholder in EDF. And it's certainly true in Russia and China and India. It's also true in Eastern Europe. And it's true in Ukraine as well. Ukraine is it's about when they work and they're not being bombed by, who. They get about 50% of their electricity from that. The U.S. is really kind of an anomaly. We've left it to private industry, and that's proven to be quite a problem, because you get different companies that use different designs, and each of these companies have to go through the ritual, and I'll say the unfortunate ritual of first of a kind build, right? And engineers know that first of a kind is always going to have more problems than you anticipate. It's kind of like your first child. No, it's not actually. But sorry, pay no attention to the man behind the screen. So the U.S. has actually kind of hamstrung itself. And that has been particularly a decision that was made from the late 1970s up until the present. It's, the U.S. favors private industry for a lot of these things. When Mr. Reagan came in, he said, let's get rid of the Department of Energy. What do they do? It's private industry, it's the oil companies that know what to do about energy. What do we know? We sit behind desks. Get rid of it. He didn't succeed. Too many Congress people had, commercial interests with government, not subsidies, but government supply. But we are something of an anomaly. Even the UK gives a lot more percentage, let's say, of its government income to nuclear power and to other forms of energy than we do. And so I don't know if that's going to change or not. You know my opinion at this point. But yeah, it's an interesting world. And now that nuclear power is spreading, it's being built for the first time in a number of new countries, including Turkey and Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, soon Uzbekistan, possibly in Ghana, in Africa. We'll see, but a lot of countries are very interested in it for energy security reasons, as he says. There's a whole geopolitics of this, but we'll see which model they fall. Right? Yeah, it's sort of an open question. It's a very good question.
Question in the back.
I've got a follow-on question about that. One of the other challenges for nuclear is like market structure. In markets that are like deregulated, it's hard to up the capital to one of these. I'm wondering if there's any correlation between like how much different countries invest in nuclear versus like if they're like regulated or a deregulated market.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Most of the markets that I mentioned are regulated. They are, they have a lot of state control over selected areas of the economy, selected industries. So we're in the midst, right? We have some states that are regulated, some states that are deregulated, some states that are half and half. We're half and half here, because we have the Bonneville Power Administration, which runs all of our hydropower, and that's most of our electricity, and that's a government. That's part of the government. And they've done a pretty good job. I mean, aside from the whole controversy about salmon and Native American ownership over lands and waters. But in terms of providing electricity to the people, especially green electricity, they've done fairly well. So, but it's a mess in the United States. It changes from state to state. So your point is a very good one, and as it changes, the market changes. We do not have a national market for electricity. We have state markets, and even in states, in some cases, Michigan's an example, you have local markets. California's the biggest mess of all. I know it's not a surprise.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Great talk, by the way, guys. Thanks very much. I was probably out getting a beer when something really important was said, but story of my life. Going back to the facilities, though, right? Retiring coal plants. We obviously identify that there's value there with the existing infrastructure and how it can be, how your technology can be overlaid onto it. Are you working with any firms, any consultancies that are, or are you guys even at a point where you can start considering expansion and acquisition? And is anyone laying out sort of a roadmap for acquisition of some of these very, very value-add facilities, right, that TerraPower can overlay the tech onto?
Yeah, so the question is, are we working with anyone on acquisitions of future projects, I assume you mean?
Yes.
TerraPower itself is heavily involved in trying to understand what our roadmap looks like, and we've got a number of opportunities that are lining up on future deployments. TerraPower would not acquire these assets, just how it works. Most of these assets are owned by a utility, and then the utility would purchase a plant from us. So they would have the site and the asset, and then they would say, come build your plant on our site, and then we would deploy the technology. And so TerraPower should not be in the asset owning game, and more the technology development and deployment game moving forward. So our first site is a little bit interesting. There is some interesting changes of ownership, but more than likely our future projects will be fully just, they would own the asset, we would deploy the project on it. So, yeah. Good question though. Yeah.
Okay, so I think of like molten sodium and water boom, right? Mm-hmm. So like you have a big large pool of molten sodium, disaster mitigation.
Yeah.
Are there any other like industries that use large volumes of sodium that way, and do they have like that potential boom aspect, and how do you mitigate that?
Yeah, so the question's about what happens when you mix sodium with water. There's a large reaction with it. So what we do to try to mitigate that problem is we try to design around it, so we don't have any water systems that interface with our sodium system. So we don't have, we generate steam with our salt system, and we have our salt system between our sodium system and our steam system. So we separate our big sources of water from our sodium. So from a design standpoint, we try to keep them separate. We do employ multiple physical barriers around our sodium system, so in case there's leaks or open areas, they aren't exposed to the atmosphere, let alone the water. So we do have multiple barriers that separate our sodium systems from or sources of water or even air. Most things are inverted. So we, by design, we try to mitigate sodium leaks. And if they do, we have mitigation features that kind of keep them in a controlled fashion. Are there other industries that use sodium? I think the answer is yes. And I think is it like battery systems or battery technologies uses sodium.
Yeah, I think the semiconductor industry does.
Semiconductor industry uses sodium. So there are other uses for it. There are companies that sell sodium on the commercial market that we buy it from. So there is a
large
industry for
active
sodium.
market.
Yeah, an active market. Great. I think if there are any other questions, I'll be around. There's actually more than a handful of people from TerraPower here. They're wearing sweatshirts and jackets and stuff. So if there's any questions about Natrium, TerraPower, please just walk up and ask me questions. It was great chatting with everyone. It's a fun project to be on. I hope I get invited back and give you more updates as we go. So with that, everyone have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Thanks, it was a good talk. Actually, the last question I was going to ask was the one he asked.
Okay, the sodium fire one.